Dark stories have always existed, especially in mediums like anime and manga. Occasionally they'd pop up and have a long-lasting effect. Berserk is a fantastic example. It's one of the most praised releases of all time, and it's incredibly tough to stomach. In the past, these stories existed within a niche, but for a while now, some of the most popular stories being released are incredibly dark. Attack on Titan, Jujutsu Kaisen, Chainsaw Man. Many are even being lauded as masterpieces. And it's not just the hyper-popular shows. Recent releases like Gachiakura, Orb on the Movement of Earth, and Takapi's Original Sin are all built around dark premises. The range going from dark, in a way I'm familiar with, to so dark I refuse to watch them. Welcome to this week's video. My name is Pei, and today we're talking about how anime seems to be getting darker. When people bring up popular anime, most of the time they're talking about shonen. From before the big three, Naruto, Bleach, and One Piece, all the way through more modern releases like Attack on Titan, Demon Slayer, and Jujutsu Kaisen, shonen's not just been dominant, it's been the center of popular anime. But like most other artistic mediums, genres are starting to blend together. While Demon Slayer isn't the darkest show, Attack on Titan and Jujutsu Kaisen don't pull punches. And I think that's because of the pendulum of trends and the allure of novelty. There's this great quote from Brandon Sanderson's series The Stormlight Archives, where a character Wit asks what the most valued human skill is. The culture of those people have life pursuits dedicated to arts and war. Is it being a great orator, a skilled performer, or a fantastic writer? No. What Wit argues is just as important as making something great is novelty, being the first to do it. Historic inventions or fantastic stories, if done before, lose an immense amount of their value. Art is filled to the brim with storytelling structures and norms, familiarity that leads to comfort for the audience. But writers have the unique challenge of making something that's familiar while still being novel, offering something new, unique to the story being told. The terribly difficult job of walking a fine line between comfortable and surprising, which leads to the natural pendulum effect we see all throughout society. Kids consistently rebel, so fashion that's in one day will be out the next before eventually cycling back. And art is very often created by those who've been influenced. We stand on the shoulders of giants and then eventually rebel from the things that have become stale through overuse and saturation, swinging back and forth between trends and subversion. When plot armor was used to the point of cliché, there became an appeal for characters to face very real consequences. This is why in so many of my videos I talk endlessly about audience expectations, because in this world dominated by shonen stories, darker shows are novel. Or they were. When people find out what I do professionally, if they like anime and manga, very often conversation eventually shifts towards one they're passionate about. One Piece gets brought up a lot, but more often people talk about Tatsuki Fujimoto's Chainsaw Man. A lot of those conversations end up veering towards claims of genius. People who've read or consumed this story feel very passionately about it. And recently, I think I've fallen into that camp. I enjoyed season 1 of Chainsaw Man a lot. One of my most popular videos is talking about my favorite part. But yesterday, at the time of recording this, I watched the Chainsaw Man movie, and I was blown away. It was really good, and only capable of telling such a unique, fantastic story because it was unafraid to be dark. It deeply embraced its tone and created something that was beautiful. Which leads to a question. Is this video arguing that if anime really is getting darker, that's good or bad? Well, I think dark media is ultimately more a choice with clear trade-offs. While it can make for a better story, I think it can also alienate audiences. For me personally, there's a limited amount of resources I can dedicate to dark media. I get too invested or it gets too hard, and just historically, there's significantly less mass appeal. But when people pull it off, it's not just good, it's great. And those types of stories stick with people. It makes you think. I plan on making one or a couple videos about the new Chainsaw Man movie, and that's because I think it's a great example of dark done well. But like I said, there are trade-offs. A standout recent release that I didn't feel like I could watch is Takapi's Original Sin, a story filled to the brim with trigger warnings, one that very quickly states what type of show it's going to be. Around the time of its release and before many people knew it was really good, I talked to multiple friends who had read or tried to read the manga. People I'd argue that have a drastically higher tolerance to dark media than I do, and a lot of them didn't finish it. This show, once again, is a story that can only be told if it's dark, So the trade-off, while it has capacity to tell a significant, unique story, dark media is just less approachable. And sometimes that doesn't get in my way, and sometimes it does. Togepi's original sin is held very dearly by those who love it. Yet still, despite all the positive reviews and reception, I won't pick it up. I just don't want to. And there are many people who feel the exact same way about Chainsaw Man. Dark media isn't good or bad. Much more important than the content of any specific show is how it's executed. Many different anime have sold me on topics or structures that I thought I wouldn't be interested in. And in people's lives, there's many different roles media fills. Sometimes you want to be challenged, sometimes you want something that's easy to watch. And those wants are influenced by what's available. I think this advent of hyper-popular, dark, heavy stories in manga and anime are built off of the dominance of shonen and isekai. Jujutsu Kaisen's an interesting case of a dark story because as it originates as a shonen, it eventually evolves to kind of change genre. A soft spoiler warning for people who haven't seen Jujutsu Kaisen's second season. If you want to avoid that, skip to this timestamp. But Jujutsu Kaisen evolves into a very different story than what it's initially introduced as. There's this whole inciting incident in the first season where Yuji Itadori, the main character of Jujutsu Kaisen, has a conversation with his dying grandfather. He urges Yuji to utilize his strength to help others. This is a clear motive for Yuji until it's kind of dismantled. Unlike other popular shonen, the power of good intentions is not enough in Jujutsu Kaisen. During the Shibuya arc, things quickly degrade to apocalyptic. Loved ones die and despair hits an all-time high. Then Sukuna gets out and runs wild. Yuji's forced to recognize that his body is a vessel for a monster. This story is filled with despair. Now, despite these challenges, Yuji does eventually find direction, but not without there being a clear shift in the tone of the story, going from shonen to post-apocalyptic. Well-executed dark stories will always hold a place in media, refusing to shy away from the world's sometimes random and extreme violence, exploring stories beyond just what's easy to palate. But those decisions are hard to pull off. If a writer chooses to kill a beloved character, in the end it better be worth it, because no matter how well a dark story is executed, it will just be too much for some members of the audience. I've mentioned in past videos that I've found myself significantly more drawn to optimistic media. As I'm juggling more challenges in my life and hardships, I'm choosing to go to media that makes me feel hopeful, that doesn't push me over my capacity. But that doesn't mean I don't watch dark stories. I just try to choose ones that I think are worth it. My resources like time, energy, attention, and more than anything, emotional investment are valuable. So I have a limited amount of slots to dedicate towards dark media. In 1938, at the latter end of the Great Depression, the first Superman comic was released. There's a popular idea I've seen argued many times on the internet that dark times make bright movies. That Superman, an incredibly overpowered hero, a symbol of virtue and good, existed in part because of the times people were facing. While circumstance influences writers, it also impacts consumerism. And art is influenced by the ability to sustain itself, especially widespread, expensive media that requires investment. If you look at artistic mediums that are more individual, like music or novels, there's room to move away from what is financially viable, because people are capable of just making something good, but there's so much investment necessary for an industry like anime. Anime is an industry that already exists on paper-thin margins. Many times online I've read that anime only sustains itself through back-end profit on manga. Which leads to the next question. If we're in dark times, why are we still making dark media? Well, the first obvious answer is that anime and manga are Japanese. The people of Japan are facing different timelines and challenges than, let's say, American consumers of anime. But the other answer is that anime is a medium built off of adaptation. 3/4 of releasing anime is adapting manga, light novels, or video games, and there's often around a 4-year delay between the original publishing of a manga and the releasing of an anime adaptation. Chainsaw Man's manga was first released late 2018. The anime first aired in late 2022. Jujutsu Kaisen's manga first released in early 2018, with a preface story releasing the year before. Its anime came out in late 2020. Not only that, but there are years between seasons. The Chainsaw Man movie, which follows season 1, came out in 2025. Part of the reason we're getting so much good dark media right now is because a lot of great stories started being written 7 years ago. But this will in turn lead to a pendulum effect, a swing back. And I kind of think it's already started. This channel is built off of talking about Frieren Beyond Journey's End, a story that's pretty optimistic and easy to watch in comparison. It's had widespread commercial and critical success, In reality, what's popular will be most determined by what's well made. But the people writing those stories will be influenced by the landscape they exist in and the things that inspire them. I mentioned earlier that I have a limited amount of resources to dedicate to dark media, but honestly, that's subject to change, heavily influenced by the quality of what I'm consuming. Chainsaw Man's Reze Arc movie has felt deeply inspirational, and I think ultimately I'm very grateful to live in an era where we're getting such a wide range of fantastic media. Dark stories that don't hide from serious topics, and on the opposite side of the spectrum, ones that are easy to watch and still feel deeply emotionally resonant. I think audiences value novelty because we're desperate for a range of different meaningful stories. So as any one structure becomes too pronounced, people will rebel. They'll find new stories to tell. And some of them will be dark, and they'll definitely feel worth it.